When people ask what I do, I always think of the same thing, which is that at the core of a happy life are our relationships with other people. No matter what else, it all boils down to being happy in our relationships, and that's what I help people do. My approach is different because I have a sort of interesting, odd background. So I have a background in counseling, and I also have a background in business. And those two things together make me different. Because in businesses, you get called in and you don't have 10 years to solve a problem. They want it solved quickly, efficiently, and clearly. And so I use a lot of that skill set when I'm working with people individually. So most of the people that come to me have worked with other people before. It's very rare that someone comes to me who this is their first time with any kind of therapist, coach, whatever that is. And so my best thing is helping people who feel really defeated. They've made changes before and they haven't stuck. They've been at this for years and they never seem to get the momentum they want. And that's what I help them do. I help them really get to the essence of the problem quickly and solve it relatively quickly. What's different about the work I do is when people talk about their relationships, they're kind of traditional ways. You come in with your partner and the two of you sort of hash it out on the couch. And that's not what I do. So where I've really found results is working with people on their own. And actually, my book is called Be Happily Married Even If Your Partner Won't Do a Thing, because that's the essence of it. When you start to really focus on yourself and your responsibility in the relationship is when things change. What folks often don't get is that our conscious brains process information at a rate of 50 bits per second, while our unconscious brains process information at a rate of 11 million bits per second. So if I'm feeling frustrated, pissed off, annoyed with my partner, no matter how wonderful my words are, or no matter what those actions are, my partner's picking up on that. And those are the things that have to change. You have to change that attitude and that whole way of being and really looking for the other person to make you happy. And instead starting to be the person who you want to see in the relationship is how you need to be. If you want to see more love, be more loving. If you want to see more patience, you have to be more patient. And I help people with very specific tools to get there. So for example, some really quick specific tools, I tell folks, don't sack your relationship. Don't offer suggestions, don't give advice, and don't criticize. And of course, people always ask me, well, what's left? What am I supposed to do if I can't do those things? And I tell them the answer is to ask questions. If I asked you right now, what did you have for dinner last night? You stop, you'd think. And I just hijacked your brain. When we ask questions, that's what we do. We get the brain off of all the, oh, this person's bugging me and I'm really annoyed and all that, and we put it somewhere else. So now my partners may be giving me feedback about something they didn't like that I did. And instead of defending myself or listing all the ways they're wrong, I can instead ask a question. Well, can you tell me more about that? What exactly was I doing that had you thinking this? You start to be curious. You start to really look to problem solve. It's a very different way of looking at a relationship and the kind of interactions we have with our partners, and it produces incredible results. You know, I hear a lot when couples come in. I say, well, why are you here? And they'll say, the communication in our relationship is the problem. And they're wrong. It's not. Competition is the #1 problem in relationships. People saying it's your turn to put away the dishes. I drove Sophie to soccer practice last Thursday, so now you have to drive. People doing all this 50-50 in the relationship. Relationships are a shared resource. So if I'm always looking to my partner to be that person, to walk the dog, to do the extra thing, to put away the dishes, I'm literally taking away from myself. If that person becomes depleted, I get depleted because they're getting burnt out. Our shared resource, our shared pool is becoming less. So when we start to really understand that our partnerships are shared, that when they win, we win, that we want to do that, then we start to look outside to bring resources in to help the couple. So we're not always looking back and forth to pull our weight or to, do our share or that 50-50 stuff that makes me crazy, because relationships are 100-100 and you have to put 100%. If I was putting in 50% at work, I wouldn't expect raises or promotions. So putting in 50% of my relationship gets me the same thing. Doesn't get me much. So it's really time, and not to look at their 100%, that's not our jobs, to look at our partners, but to look at our own, and that's what I help people do. A great example that I can use to talk about my work is a woman, an executive woman actually, but who came to me because her husband had actually left his job and not told her. And there was sort of a long story around this, but she came in saying, he's got to work again, this is crazy, and really ready to go after that. and looking really to have a divorce. And my work with her in a relatively short period of time was about, let's take that off the table, because she really didn't want to get divorced, and really having her come to realize that they had been growing apart for a long time. You don't quit your job and not tell your partner unless you've been growing apart for a long time. So to go after the big issue like that right away, when there's no foundation, when there's no base, when there's no communication happening day to day on the micro stuff, you can't do. That was going to blow up. So we worked on her intention and her really having more positive regard for her partner and being there and listening and all the tools that I teach. And within 6 months, that started to shift. And they started to have a completely transformative experience. And actually, I got to meet him not long ago. It's about a year to the date I started working with her. They were doing well. I hadn't seen her for months, and she said, I'd like to come in. And they were very happy together. And things had really shifted and changed, and they'd been traveling and doing wonderful things together. So it just really goes to show that when you really look at where your relationship is, you've got to look over just that, I'm mad about this, or this is the problem, and just take a step back and look at the micro connections first. You have to have some foundation before you start on the big stuff.